Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Let's see. You know, this is such an important format. It really is. That I'm not going to get on here and race through 15 subjects that are on websites or on the internet or on cable news. You know, there are 1, 2, 3 that are probably worth talking about, but I just can't do it. I can't listen to it. I tried today because I didn't have a TV in the morning and so forth, so I'm listening throughout the country, and I'm listening, and people are racing through this one, and we got this one. Whoa. Slow down, man. You know, in the olden days of radio, and I'm not saying those were the great golden days, I'm just saying in the olden days of radio, people took a little bit more time. Now, I take a little bit more time, not because it's the olden days of radio, but because I don't understand why I should speed through 14 different subjects you already heard about for the last 48 hours. Doesn't mean I won't discuss some of them, but, you know, you've got to add value to it. In other words, what's the point? Now, we've been talking about the media, and I don't just mean to hit them over the head. We've been talking about it in a very substantive way. At least here we have. And that is, they create their own reality. And in this case, it's a progressive reality. And they push it out as news. Now, I've been talking about this for quite some time. And as you know, people have different hobbies. My hobby is reading, researching. It's what I like to do. It's what I like to do. I came across a book called The Image. The book is 55, 56 years old. It was published in 1962. Its author was Daniel Boorstin. He's since passed. He was a historian, very accomplished man. He was in charge of the Library of Congress for some time. Before that, he was a professor. When he was a very young man, for 1 year, from 1938 to 39, he was a communist. And then as World War II went on and he saw what the communists were doing, he rejected communism completely. And shortly thereafter, he became a conservative. Now, there's all kinds of conservatives, but fundamentally a conservative. He wrote a number of books, but he wrote this book, The Image. And here's the subtitle: A Guide to Pseudo-Events in America. I said, this son of a gun, he hit the nail on the head. Now, if I were your typical columnist, TV host, radio host, I wouldn't tell you about this man. I would steal his ideas and regurgitate them. But I can't function that way. I just can't. But I want us to take a little bit of time to understand what he was trying to convey. And he did very effectively, because back then, 1962, this was considered quite the cutting-edge book. But it is completely relevant to today. In fact, more so, given the nature of corporate mass media. In Chapter 1, his title is From News Gathering to News Making, A Flood of Pseudo-Events. Does that not sum it all up? Does that not sum it all up? A flood of pseudo-events. Just think about it. Think about it. Stormy Daniels, now this particular immigration issue, which has been around a long time. We are surrounded by these pseudo-events. And here's what he says in part. Obviously, I can't read the whole book, but there's sections I want you to hear. He says, in the last half century, now remember, the book is over 50 years old. In the last half century, a larger and larger proportion of our experience, of what we read and see and hear, has come to consist of pseudo-events. We expect more of them, and we are given more of them. They flood our consciousness. Their multiplication has gone on in the United States at a faster rate than elsewhere. Even the rate of increase is increasing every day. This is true of the world of education, of consumption, and of personal relations. It is especially true of the world of public affairs. A full explanation of the origin and rise of pseudo-events would be nothing less than a history of modern America. And during the course of the book, he focuses particularly on the media. He says, and I'm skipping around as I must, he says, then came round-the-clock media. The news gap, again, this is almost 60 years ago, over 50 years ago. The news gap soon became so narrow that in order to have additional news, quote-unquote, for each new edition or each new broadcast, it was necessary to plan in advance the stages by which any available news would be unveiled. After the weekly and the daily came the extras and the numerous regular editions of newspapers. The Philadelphia Evening Bulletin, which has gone by now, by the way, soon had 7 editions a day. No rest for the newsman. With more space to fill, he had to fill it ever more quickly. In order to justify the numerous editions, it was increasingly necessary that the news constantly change, or at least seem to change. With the radio on the air continuously during waking hours, the reporters' problems became still more acute, and keep in mind cable news in particular. News every hour on the hour, and sometimes on the half hour. Programs interrupted any time for special bulletins. How to avoid deadly repetition, the appearance that nothing was happening. The news gatherers, well, they were asleep, or that the competitors were more alert. As the costs of printing and then of broadcasting increased, it became financially necessary to keep the presses always at work and the TV screen always busy. Pressures toward the making of pseudo-events became ever stronger. News gathering turned into news making. News gathering turned into news making. Later on, he says, in many subtle ways, the rise of pseudo-events has mixed up our roles as actors and as audience, or the philosophers would say as object and as subject. Now we can oscillate between the two roles. Fascinating. New forms of pseudo-events, especially in the world of politics, thus offer a new kind of bewilderment to both politician and newsman. Is that not true? Pseudo-events spawn other pseudo-events in geometric progression. This is partly because every kind of pseudo-event being planned tends to become ritualized, with a protocol and a rigidity all its own. As each type of pseudo-event acquires this rigidity, pressures arise to produce other, derivative forms of pseudo-events, which are more fluid, more tantalizing, more interestingly ambiguous. Thus, as the press conference, as an example, a press conference, itself a pseudo-event, became formalized, there grew up the institutionalized leak. As the leak becomes formalized, still other devices will appear. In other words, individuals in and out of government leaking to the media to get their messages across, to push their advantage, to position themselves, to advance an ideology. Pseudo-events. Of course, the shrewd politician or the enterprising newsman knows this and knows how to take advantage of it. That is the leak. Seldom for outright deception, more often simply to make more news, to provide more information, or to improve communication. In a totalitarian society where people are flooded by purposeful lies, the real facts are, of course, misrepresented. But the representation itself is not ambiguous. The propaganda lie is asserted as if it were true. Its object is to lead people to believe that the truth is simpler, more intelligible than it really is. The masses, with their inertia, always need a certain time before they are ready even to notice a thing. They will lend their memories only to the thousandfold repetition of the most simple ideas. He's quoting the fascists, or he's portraying the fascists. But in our society, pseudo-events make simple facts seem more subtle, more ambiguous, more speculative than they really are. Propaganda oversimplifies experience. Pseudo-events overcomplicates it. In a democratic society like ours, and more especially in a high literate, wealthy, competitive, and technologically advanced society, the people can be flooded by pseudo-events. For us, freedom of speech and of the press and of broadcasting includes freedom to create pseudo-events. Competing competitions, competing newsmen, and competing news media contest in this creation. They vie with one another in offering attractive, supposedly informative accounts and images of the world. They are free to speculate on the facts, to bring new facts into being, to demand answers to their own contrived questions. Our so-called free marketplace of ideas is a place where people are confronted by competing pseudo-events and are allowed to judge among them. When we speak of informing the people, this is what we really mean. Now, I want you to contemplate this during the break. I want you to digest this during the break. Is this not what we are confronting today in America with the news media? Pseudo-event on top of pseudo-event, presented as news, coming at us so quickly, driving the ideological left. Is that not fundamentally what's taking place in this country, in the so-called news business? I would argue that it absolutely is. 56 years ago and today for sure. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Some of these elements of these pseudo-events. And you know what? We're going to coin a phrase together, borrow part of it from the late Dr. Professor Daniel Boorstin. He used pseudo-events. We will call it pseudo-media. And they're pseudo-reporters. Now you see why I've been saying all this time, they don't protect freedom of the press. They abuse it. So that's what we're talking about now. Pseudo-events, but really the most practiced among those who advance this are in the media. Some of the elements. Pseudo-events are more dramatic. A television debate between candidates can be planned to be more suspenseful. For example, by reserving questions which are then popped suddenly. Then a casual encounter or consecutive formal speeches planned by each separately. And by the way, he writes about presidential press conferences, how reporters can ask questions in a way, or the nature of the question, where that becomes the news, the reporter and the question. And we see that all the time in these press conferences with the likes of Jim Acosta and so forth. He is a pseudo-reporter. That is a pseudo-event. Pseudo-events being planned for dissemination are easier to disseminate and to make vivid, like the border. Participants are selected for their newsworthy and dramatic interest. Now, you've seen that all week. You've seen that all week. With some of the phony pictures and some of the phony stories and some of the real stories. Pseudo-events can be repeated at will, and thus their impression can be reinforced. That we call propaganda, folks. Pseudo-events being planned for intelligibility are more intelligible and hence more reassuring, even if we cannot discuss intelligently the qualifications of, for example, the candidates or a complicated issue. We can at least judge the effectiveness of a television performance. Knowledge of pseudo-events, that is, of what has been reported or what has been staged and how, becomes the test of being informed. News magazines provide us regularly with quiz questions concerning not what has happened, but concerning names in the news, as an example. What has been reported in the news magazines. Pseudo-events begin to provide that common discourse which some of my old-fashioned friends, he writes, have hoped to find in the great books. Pseudo-events spawn other pseudo-events in geometric progression. They dominate our consciousness simply because there are more of them, and ever more. Now, I've thrown a lot out there. But the goal is to get us to think, to look at the substance of what he says. I happen to agree with it. I happen to agree that he has defined, and the book is much more thorough and comprehensive, but has he not defined CNN, MSNBC? Has he not defined the marriage among ideological progressives, whether they be elected, appointed, whether they be on television, radio, whether they're writing columns, whomever they are, wherever they are? The staging of events? Has he not effectively described rules for radicals in Saul Alinsky? And as he called them pseudo-events, I've been calling it the unreality that's been created by the left. It's the same concept. It's the same concept that we live in the world of the progressive, who tells us what the news is, even though it's not news, who decides what to focus on, decides what to omit. And then when you call the media out on this, when they're particularly aggressive in what they're doing, and particularly partisan and ideological in what they're doing, you are attacked because you, the pseudo-reporters argue, are attacking freedom of the press. You're threatening freedom of the press, when in fact you're not threatening freedom of the press at all. They're abusing it. You're pointing it out. And they are not news people at all. They're not news people at all. Most of the people who self-identify as newsmen and newswomen, as journalists and reporters, are not. They're not. They're pseudo-journalists, pseudo-reporters, pseudo-newsmen. Not all, but the vast majority. The profession has declined considerably. I'll be right back.
Credit card debt and interest can get out of control fast. With Lending Club, you can consolidate your high-interest debt or pay off credit cards into one fixed monthly payment. Just go to LendingClub.com, answer a few simple questions, and if you're approved, up to $40,000 automatically deposited into your bank account in as little as a few days. Go to LendingClub.com/Levin today to check your rate in minutes. That's LendingClub.com/Levin. All loans made by WebBank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Mark Levin, America's tyranny hunter. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
Borston says, once we have tasted the charm of pseudo-events, we are tempted to believe they are the only important events. Our progress poisons the sources of our experience, and the poison tastes so sweet that it spoils our appetite for plain fact. Our seeming ability to satisfy our exaggerated expectations makes us forget that they are, in fact, exaggerated. A clue to the new unreality of the citizen's world is the perverse new meaning now given to the word leak. Remember, this is 56 years ago. To leak, according to the dictionary, is to let a fluid substance out or in accidentally as the ship leaks. But nowadays, a news leak is one of the most elaborately planned ways of emitting information. It is, of course, a way in which a government official, with some clearly defined purpose, a leak, even more than a direct announcement, is apt to have some definite, devious purpose behind it, makes an announcement, asks a question, or puts a suggestion. It might more accurately be called a sub rosa announcement, an indirect statement, or cloaked news. The news leak is a pseudo-event par excellence. It is, in its origin and growth, the leak illustrates another axiom of the world of pseudo-events. Pseudo-events produce more pseudo-events. And with the elaboration of news-gathering facilities in Washington, of regular planned press conferences, of prepared statements for future release, and of countless other practices, the news protocol has hardened. Both government officials and reporters have felt the need for more flexible and more ambiguous modes of communication between them. And so he says they turn to the pseudo-events to influence, if not control, the real events and the understanding of reality. This is pretty heavy stuff. What do you make of all this? Chris, Baltimore, Maryland, listening on WMAL. Go ahead, sir.
Mark, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much for taking my call.
You bet.
How prescient was this guy? 56 years ago? Can you imagine? If not for conservative talk radio and alternative media sources, imagine where the society would be today.
I am
on a
trying
fast track.
desperately to get my headphones to work. So I would ask the caller to continue as I mess with this. All right?
Yeah, Mark. So what I was saying was, imagine where we would be without alternative media sources or conservative talk radio. We'd be.
Well, this is part of the problem, though, isn't it? Even though we have alternative news sources and so forth, if they're simply going to repeat what the pseudo-media say and react to the pseudo-media, not for the purpose of determining right from wrong and fact from fiction, but to fill time, then we're no better than them, are we?
No,
so we need to be very
and
careful about it, don't we?
We do, and you really have to be selective about where you get your information from, and it just takes work, and I think that's part of the problem. The media knows this. They know that we're in a society where we're trying to raise our families, we're trying to work, make ends meet, and it's hard to stay informed. And if they just get you following the bouncing ball of all these distractions, I can see it really contributing to what overall the progressives want to do. And
I mean, as an example, there are real world things going on out there, real dangers we face. China its military advances are unbelievable in terms of its technological might, which it stole from us. Look what Russia's up to. We've been talking about North Korea, and now what are we talking about? We're talking about what the pseudo-reporters want us to talk about, want us to think about. So day in and day out, it's that we have the equivalent of Nazi concentration camps and Japanese internment camps, that we are a horrible people in a horrible country and we need open borders. Driving the left's agenda, driving the progressives' agenda. So I would take it one step beyond Borston. That it's not only pseudo-events, these are pseudo-events that have as their purpose to advance the cause of progressivism. I would add that chunk to it, and that's a big chunk, and it's a necessary chunk. All right, my friend, I appreciate your call. A great affiliate in Baltimore is WCBM. We're very, very pleased to be there. Joe, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, Sirius XM, go.
Oh, my goodness, the great one, Mark Levin.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It's a first-time caller. Man,
Thank you.
I love you. Thank you for being there, sir.
I appreciate it.
Talking to your great call taker, Rich, and what a good guy, just like you. And I said to him, Mark, I want to call you Mr. Levin. I'm sorry.
No, call me Mark and go for it, baby.
I have so much respect for you, sir.
That's all right.
I got to tell you, I'm 66 years old. I've been around, and I can get depressed just like everybody else. I see what's going on. It always seems like, we're losing. And then in the last 24 hours, and a lot of it has to do with listening to folks like you, it always seemed to be, you're there. I mean, it's just so good that you're there. And of course, my unshakable faith in the good Lord, that I know that we're winning. And we're winning because, these scoundrels, these just evil, ugly people that are there, they're Marxists. If we want to be honest, let's call them what they are. They're just Marxists. They're just godless folks that just want to, they have no appreciation for this wonderful country.
Where are we going with this?
All right, let me get to the point.
Yes.
We have to be optimistic. We have to know that we're winning because they're exposed now. if Trump is the catalyst, and I think he is, we have to know we are winning. They're out in the open now. They're so ridiculous. They're so absurd.
Well, listen, if you mean by winning that Trump has successfully exposed them, I agree. But I don't think we're winning. I think they control most of the college campuses. They control most of the media. They control most of the movie houses in Hollywood. They control most of our governing institutions. We are on defense. I think we have to recognize that, understand it's a daunting task, but also understand it is surmountable. There's still time left. We're an army of tens of millions of people. I've been thinking about this overnight because I wasn't really happy with last night's show. To be perfectly honest with you, I wasn't happy with myself. I wasn't happy with the show. I'm not making any excuses. There was some breaking news in the first hour. It just knocked me off my game, and that's okay. But I'm focused again. And my point to you folks is this. We have to know where we stand. We have to know where we stand. And where we stand is in a very difficult place. But we also need to know that there's tens of millions of people who share our principles, who share our views. They voted for Donald Trump. In the past, they voted for Ronald Reagan. It is we who are underrepresented in this government. It is we who are underrepresented in the parts of government that don't care if you're represented or not, like the courts and the bureaucracy and so forth. But it is we who have to use ideas, who have to use free speech, who have to call out the so-called press. It is we who have to be resolute. Because if we're not, nobody else will be. Now, Joe, I understand you're an ex-cop, and I want to thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
And you take care of yourself. Bucks County, man, it's been like 10, 15 years since I've been there, but it's a beautiful county. Beautiful county. Donna, Frederick, Maryland, the great WMAL. Go.
Hello, Mark. I just want to thank you for basically defining the term fake media, which we all refer to so affectionately, and that book, what an incredible read, and you did a wonderful job articulating that for us, and I don't know where we'd be if we didn't have you all these years and your fellow talk show hosts that pull these things and extrapolate them for us and define them for us, because we're supposed to live in a free society, and so much of what you
honestly
said,
I wish more of them would do that, because what I'm trying to do now is bang the pots and pans and say we cannot become, in the alternative media, the free media, conservative talk radio, conservatives on the web and on the internet, conservatives on Fox and on other networks, we cannot become them. In other words, it's not good enough just to take what they throw at us and embrace it, I don't mean support it, and then spend 3 hours talking about it. I don't disagree that we have to talk about it. We need to confront it. We need to unravel it. Got it. But we need to do more than that. One of the things we complain about with Republicans is they do not explain our principles, is they do not explain the Constitution, is they do not explain liberty. They do not explain capitalism and private property rights and all the rest of it. And they don't. And if we don't do it, people like me, it's not going to get done, because it's not done on our college campuses and our history classes. It's just not. And so we've got to make better use of this format. We've got to make better use of this platform. We've got to make better use of our time. That's just my humble opinion.
and I agree with you wholeheartedly, Mark, and thanks again. And you know what? I agree with you, especially this week, because we really need to be talking about the IG report way more than being on the defensive with immigration.
Or if we're going to talk about, as an example, this immigration issue, why don't we point out, as I did on Hannity last night, and there are other arguments you can make, they want to talk about Japanese internment camps, Donna? Let's talk about them. Who set them up? Franklin Roosevelt. Who funded them? The Democrat Congress. Who upheld them as constitutional, for crying out loud? The packed Roosevelt Supreme Court. Those Japanese internment camps are in the hands of the Democrat Party. And we need to talk about that. That's called history. They give us opportunities to unravel what they're doing. And we ought to do it. What I'm saying is, do it the right way. All right, Donna, thank you for your call. I appreciate it. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
A friend of mine writes me, those were American citizens, those Japanese who were interred. Actually, that's not correct. Some were not. There were Japanese Americans and Americans of Japanese descent. It didn't matter. They were rounded up and they were removed. So I do give the point, yes, that there were American citizens too, but that's not the point. The overall point. You want to talk about internment camps? The only political party in this country to create internment camps, and I mean create internment camps, was the Democrat Party. It was supported by the Democrat Party, it was funded by the Democrat Party, and their judges upheld it. I believe it, off the top of my head, it was a military order, 9066, something like that, issued by FDR. He may have issued it to Curtis LeMay, as a matter of fact. I'm doing this by memory. So, and interesting, every time the Democrats bring this up, not a single reporter reminds them of that. Not one. As high schoolers graduate, are they heading to places where they'll learn why America is the world's freest nation? That we're the first country founded on the principle that all men are created equal? Will they be taught the Constitution, our rich history, or what makes America great? There's a place where students study these truths. It's called Hillsdale College. At Hillsdale, students study what is true, good, and beautiful. And by putting in the work to understand these things, students graduate ready to lead. As Vice President Pence said at the commencement this year, Hillsdale students learn not what to do, but what to be. Hillsdale also offers its stellar education to you. And through Imprimis and free online courses like Constitution 101, every American can learn like a Hillsdale student, and by the way, from the same professors. Most remarkably of all, Hillsdale provides this service to our nation without taking a single penny of taxpayer money, not a single penny. I encourage you to learn how Hillsdale can serve you at a website just for you, my listeners, levinforhillsdale.com, Levin for Hillsdale.com. levinforhillsdale.com. The President of the United States has been really on the mark, hasn't he? Pseudo events, pseudo news organizations, pseudo reporters. He calls it fake news. And he's right. And he's been right. I'm just adding a little bit more to it, but he's been right. It's fake news. It's a concoction. It's a fabrication. Not in every instance, obviously, but in many instances. And he's personally experiencing it. We are personally experiencing it. And the reason I wanted to point out Daniel J. Borston, doctor, professor, former Secretary of the Library of Congress for quite a long time, a celebrated historian, as a matter of fact, is because he called this a long time ago. He adds a lot of intellectual and scholarly substance to it. And in doing so, he posthumously backs up what the President of the United States has been saying. Now, when you watch these people on TV, or listen to them, or read what they have to say, they're becoming more and more extreme. Less and less news, more and more pseudo, if you will. Less and less news, more and more pseudo. It tells you something when you really can't tell the difference between a Stephen Colbert and a Jake Tapper, or a Jimmy Kimmel and a Wolf Blitzer. Tells you something, doesn't it? How these events are pushed into the culture, how they're manipulated, how you can't tell the difference between actual news and supposed comedy and the people who deliver both? That's true. I'll give you an example. There's a guy by the name of Donnie Douche. Donnie Douche is on The Morning Joe. I want you to hear what Donnie Douche has to say on The Morning Joe. He said it today. Cut 4, go.
What has to happen now, this can no longer be about who Trump is. It has to be about who we are. If we are working towards November, we can no longer say Trump's the bad guy. If you vote for Trump, you're the bad guy. Mm-hmm. If you vote for Trump, you are ripping children from parents' arms. The mistake that we've made in the past is look at that bad guy over there, look at that bad guy. What the Democrats have to do is make the next election a referendum on not who Trump is, but who you are. And that's the big difference. You can no longer now as a voter, because it's now not about taxes, it's not even about some abstract term of immigration or nationalism. If you vote for Trump, then you, the voter, you, not Donald Trump, are standing at the border like Nazis going, you here, you here. And I think we now have to flip it, and it's a given the evilness of Donald Trump. But if you vote, you can no longer separate yourself. You can't say, well, he's okay, but...
Now, if you're like me, you want to put your fist through my microphone right now. Because you know what a lying scumbag this guy is. Excuse my French. This is a news network, MSNBC. MSNBC. You get the point? Absolute fake. Absolute pseudo-news. Propaganda operation. I'll be right back. That was Donnie Douche. He's
here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. If you're still here or just joining us, pat yourself on the back. You're the smartest people in radio land. In fact, you're the smartest people in the land, period. Now, let us continue, because there's more. The Image, A Guide to Pseudo-Events in America by Daniel Boorstin, 56 years ago. Even more applicable today than then. For those of you who just joined us, you can listen to the first hour on our radio rewind when we get off the air here. By the way, a couple of housekeeping matters. I will be on Troopathon, the Troopathon event, shortly after this program ends. Mr. Producer, can you put the link up, please, on my social sites? And also, let me know what it is later so I can announce it on the air. I hope the folks will join us. Because this is an annual event. This is their big fundraising event, and I want to help them as much as we can. It's troopathon.org. It's that simple. Troopathon.org. Please check it out. Please write it down. Troopathon.org. Also, I have a very big program Sunday, 10 p.m. on the Fox News Channel on Life, Liberty, and Levin. We're going to tackle the issue of trade, private property rights, money in your pockets. So we're going to take this very complicated subject and lay it out over the course of an hour. So I really hope you'll join us. I have a wonderful guest, and I think Dr. Mark Perry, Professor Perry, and I think together we're going to learn a great deal. And you may not agree with what somebody says, but at least you'll know that you walked away from it with some substance. So I hope you'll check us out. We're taking on this big issue of trade, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific Time on the Fox News Channel on Life, Liberty, and Levin. The following week, I have a very special guest. And I'll tell you about that next week. I also want to thank all of those of you who watch. This isn't a show for stupid people. And yet I don't want to do a show that is like all the other shows. I just don't want to do it, a conga line of guests and so forth and so on. So it's the kind of show that ought to be on the air on Fox at the end of Sunday night before you're heading off to work on Monday. It's different than all the rest. I don't pump up the show with a bunch of guests. I don't pump them up with provocative guests. I don't do that sort of thing. We have a conversation like we're having right now. The Image, A Guide to Pseudo-Events in America. It just is a terrific book. In Chapter 5, and there aren't many chapters in this book, so that's near the end of the book, Borston says, tempted, like no generation before us, to believe we can fabricate our experience, our news, our celebrities, our adventures, our art forms, we finally believe we can make the very yardstick by which all these are to be measured. That we can make our very ideals. This is the climax of our extravagant expectations. It is expressed in a universal shift in our American way of speaking from talk about ideals to talk about images. It says, look at our declaration. The laws of nature and nature's God, it's in the Constitution, governed our orderly universe. For neither God nor man was the world wholly plastic. But more recently, just as adventure has become a name for the unexpectedness we plan for ourselves, or pay ourselves to plan for, so we have emptied the word value. We've moved away from a traditional meaning found in older dictionaries. Value equals ethics. That which is worthy of esteem for its own sake, that which has intrinsic worth. Toward a newer and modern American meaning, value in sociology, in acts, in customs, in institutions, etc., regarded in a particular, especially favorable way by a people, an ethnic group, and so forth. So our new social scientists speak of values all the time. By it, they mean the peculiar standards which a society has made for itself. By it, they reassure us that we need not worry over the dissolution of ancient ideals, since all ideals are now obsolete. The most civilized peoples, in fact, are to be those who know they are guided by values of their own making. This is why I take it to the next step. He doesn't say this, but I'll say it. He's talking about progressivism. Yet for most of our history, we have believed ourselves a nation guided by ideals. Ideals given to us by tradition, by reason, or by God. In 19th century America, the most extreme modernism held that man was made by his environment. In 20th century America, without abandoning belief that we are made by our environment, we also believe our environment can be made almost wholly by us. This is the appealing contradiction at the heart of our passion for pseudo-events, for made news, synthetic heroes, prefabricated tourist attractions, homogenized, interchangeable forms of art and literature, where there are no originals, but only the shadows we make of our other shadows. We believe we can fill our experience with newfangled content. Almost everything we see and hear and do persuades us that this power is ours. The life in America, which I have described, he writes, is a spectacular sport in which we ourselves make the props and are the sole performers. But to what end? How surprising if men who make their environment and fill experience with whatever they please cannot also make their God. God himself becomes a pseudo-event with all the familiar characteristics. And they go on. Or he goes on, and he's quite right, isn't he? Is he not describing, although he is not pointing this out, and I will again for the third time, is he not describing the ideology of the progressive? Remaking man, remaking society, rejecting history, rejecting Aristotle, rejecting Cicero, rejecting the founding fathers, rejecting the Enlightenment, because they have all kinds of plans and programs and ideologies that they seek to impose on us. History and experience is only relevant to the extent they can use it to advance their ideology. It's not really there to learn from. It's to be manipulated or rejected wholesale. Then back to the media. The fake media, as the president calls it. I should say them, it's plural. The fake media. And he's right about most of the media. With pseudo-events. For an entire week, the entire nation's been focused on a pseudo-event. There's much more horrific things, activities going on in our country and other countries than the pseudo-event that we've been focused on for the last week. Because this pseudo-event drives the politics of the progressives, serves the purpose of the media, the propagandists, for elected and appointed progressives. The Democrats don't want to, quote-unquote, fix this. And here's the reality. Not the pseudo-reality, the reality. The fact of the matter is, there's no easy way to do this. When foreigners come into this country, and they do so lawlessly, when they put their lives on the line and the lives of their children on the line, assuming they are the parents and those are their children, just for argument's sake, and it's dropped into the lap of a society that has certain rules and requirements for people to come into this country, it can never be a perfect system. It can never be a very perfect system or an almost perfect system. Because what triggers all this is not you and me. It's not our country. It's not our culture. It is the foreigner who seeks to violate our law, and it is the government, in this case, Congress, and specifically the Democrats and enough Republicans, who refuse to secure the nation's sovereignty. We do not have concentration camps in this country. That is a lie. A pseudo-lie. A pseudo-event, I should say. We used to have internment camps in this country when FDR set them up and the Democrats supported them. We do not have internment camps anymore. When kooks on TV and radio and on the internet and shortwave radio used to talk about FEMA and their concentration camps, they were quickly dismissed. But now, when the pseudo-media and the Democrats and Laura Bush talk about internment camps, we're supposed to take that very, very seriously. See, these are all concoctions. They're all fabrications. The fact of illegal immigration and the difficulty it poses, that's a reality. But that's not what we're discussing. We're discussing something that's fake. Concentration camps, internment camps, the purposeful and widespread abuse of little kids who come from foreign countries, that's not who we are. That's not what we're doing. And yet that's been the news, the pseudo-news, pseudo-events for more than a week, actually. And this is the progressive mentality, to create fictions. Their ideology is a fiction. If you want to know the truth, they cannot create paradise. They cannot create a more perfect union. They cannot create a nation where everybody is absolutely equal, where their income is equal, where there's no poor and no rich. They cannot create a society of advanced egalitarian notions and so forth and so on. What you get is a police state. And push too hard, you get genocide like you're seeing right now in Venezuela. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
promoting pseudo events through pseudo news, the facts don't matter. They don't matter. And so when you're confronted with facts such as, well, these photos you're using were actually when Obama was president. Well, that doesn't matter. Or, Obama also segregated kids. That doesn't matter. They have a 100% enforcement here. Well, we don't actually have internment kids. Well, that doesn't matter. Because you're pushing a lie. And so facts are to be rejected. You're calling it news. And then they invoke the Alinsky. Like this, what was that guy, Deutsch's, what's his name? Danny Douche. He, like him. Now you start trashing everybody who disagrees with you. Every single human being who votes for Trump. They trash Trump. They trash his family. Now you got to trash the voters. Robert, Dallas, Texas, on the Mark Levin app. How are you, sir?
Hello, sir. Fantastic. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you for taking my call. When you brought up this book, I kind of caught your show a few minutes late, and wanted to mention I'm a professional broadcast meteorologist with degrees in both meteorology and climatology, and they go hand in hand, but they're obviously distinct. But more to your point, I'm beginning a PhD program in communications, actually, which is something a little out of my arena, at least academically. And as part of the PhD program, I'll be teaching classes, and rumor has it that I'll be teaching some sort of media ethics class. And to be frank, I've never taught a class in my life, but as a professional broadcaster, I'm always informing the public regarding weather, and so I very much thank you, appreciate you bringing this book to my attention, because I think it's something that, at least once I read it, that I may be able to incorporate into my curriculum. And I'm a young guy, but I've been a professional broadcaster for several years, and even I can see how little education so many journalists through my career have obtained through their studies. Journalists who can't pronounce the names of, local journalists who can't pronounce the name of world leaders, or who call Mississippi a landmass between Louisiana and Alabama. But I digress. But I want to thank you for bringing this book to my attention, and for really all you do, your radio show, Levin TV, your books. I consider you kind of my real undergraduate advisor anyway, while concurrently studying meteorology. So thank you.
You're very kind, Robert.
My attention.
Thank you. And the book is, thank you very much, and good luck with the course. Thank you for what you're doing. The book is The Image, A Guide to Pseudo Events in America, Daniel J. Borston. Very, very important book as far as I'm concerned. Just finished it last night. And the coincidence there is we've been talking about this. And this just adds a lot of meat to the bones here. It just does. Bob, Baltimore, Maryland, the great WCBM. Go.
Mark, calling
Yes,
you
sir.
about how the narrative in media slants everything. And the editor. I was a newspaper reporter for over 20 years, worked in the D.C. area. I can tell you that I've had many a story killed, so many stories killed that I'm going back 10, 12 years, they started killing the stories about illegal aliens. When I would report, we had a base realignment, a military base realignment, and I did an article on that, and I did some research and talked to some experts, and they said it would act as a magnet to bring tremendous amount of illegal aliens into the area. And when I put that in the article, they called me in the office. The editor says, "We can't run that." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, people will think you're a racist." Mm-hmm. Well, he didn't say me. They'll think the paper is a racist.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, though, the people that really own the paper used a lot of illegal alien labor. So it's pervasive. They won't cover stories. I used to cover affirmative action, and the narrative was you got to show how this minority never had a break. He was failing in the real world, but because of this program, now he's a multimillionaire. And what I found was the exact opposite. I found that many of these people were bankrupt. They were given contracts at above market rates. In other words, they were giving higher bids than the average person that wanted the contract. They were cut out, and they were given these contracts. And then when they screwed up the contract, and I'm not saying that always happened, there were people that would be on the sidelines that would straighten it out. and they were really keeping things going. And it ended up costing the taxpayer probably twice what it should have cost. And this was an everyday occurrence. And when I try to report on it, can't do it. Story's dead.
All right, Bob, I appreciate you sharing that with us very, very much. We're going to continue with this when I return.
To defend liberty and defeat tyranny. Call the Mark Levin Show now at 877-381-3811.
I wanted to let all of the fans of Levin TV out there know about a special offer we have going on right now. We wanted to make it a little bit easier for all our subscribers and all who aren't subscribing right now. That is, our biggest fans, to get the best pricing possible on Levin TV and the rest of the wonderful shows on our conservative network. Conservative Review TV, that's CRTV. So we came up with our best offer yet. Now you can get a 3-year subscription to CRTV for only $199. That's only $5.53 a month. Now, if you've been a fan of the show for a while now, you know we're in this for the long haul. We hope you will be too. There's no other place online where you'll get the truth, unfiltered and uncensored. Give us a call right now at 844-LEVIN-TV, 844-LEVIN-TV. I know the government's closed. We're open. And mention this ad to get 3 years of CRTV for only what amounts to $5.53 a month. Setup is quick. It's easy. You'll be ready to watch in 5 minutes. You'll tell us what kind of devices, computers, TV you have, and we're off to the races. 5 minutes. So give us a call, 844-LEVIN-TV, 844-LEVIN-TV, and we'll get you set up immediately. That's 844-LEVIN-TV. All right. Let us continue here. Let us go to Chris in Eureka, California, the great KINS. Go.
Mark, I really enjoyed your show last night. I heard you beating yourself up about it a little bit. You weren't happy with you, but I'm sorry that you have to deal with all this swill. This is so far beneath a man of your intellectual stature and accomplishments. You do great. Don't ever think so. We love you out here.
Thank you.
And as far as the pseudo intellectuals, the pseudo Democrats, I also call them the fake Democrats. I mean, they hostily took over, basically, the Democratic Party. I understand that you have your issues with the Democratic Party, but at the same time, this is not the Democratic Party. They don't have anything to do with the middle class, and they haven't for, 30 years. Every time they say all this stuff, every time they get in power, the only thing they do is gut the middle class. That's all they've done.
Well, you make an excellent point. And you make an excellent point. They are the 1960s retreads and their offspring.
That's correct. The values and let me tell you something too. One of the big problems with the robbing of our liberties and our freedoms in this country is that when you're young and impetuous and all this doing all that crazy stuff, that's all fine and dandy, and then you get a little political whiff. Well, let me tell you, a lot of young kids start off as socialists or that whole mind thought until they get their own money. And
the problem is, Chris, a lot of these adults in positions of power, call it grow up or not grow up, they have not changed. And I think the progressive left is very good at seizing power. They're very good. They want to teach in our universities. They want to be actors in Hollywood. They want to be politicians in Washington. They want to work for agencies and departments in Washington. In other words, power is what drives them, and power is not what drives everybody. But it uniquely drives the progressive because they have to have power in order to advance their ideology. Absolutely. It's not a natural, rational ideology. It's one that has to be imposed on people.
Exactly. That's the nature of the control. The positions that they've always strived for in our society are relative to controlling other people, their liberties, their freedoms. telling them things other than what it is. Like you said, the whole pseudo thing. I mean, I've been calling them the pseudo intellectuals for years. I mean, I know that they're deceptive and dishonest, and that. I've been watching this for 30 years on the news. I've known it for a long time. And
this phrase pseudo-intellectuals, which I've been using too, what's different about this book, what's important to this book, is it reinforces points that you and I and others have been thinking and been making. And he's talking about pseudo-events, the fabrication of events, calling it news, pushing it out into the world of reality. And so I just thought that his description, and it's actually more comprehensive than that, I can only touch on it to some extent here, but is so right on when you hear the preening and the sanctimony of these real lightweights on TV, whether they're hosts, whether they're guests. Now they're out, talking about concentration camps and internment camps and trashing people who voted for Trump. It's not even enough anymore to take on Trump, to take on the Republican Party. They want to burn everything down, burn the whole thing down. And then they want you to believe that they're the ones upholding some kind of tradition, some kind of belief system, when they reject it all. Absolutely. They reject it all. We've been spending a week on this issue that's been around for 40, 50 years, and they have no solution except open borders. They don't want to say it. And so here we are as a nation, focused, discussing endlessly a pseudo-event. All right, Chris, you're a very, very nice man and very, very sharp, too. I appreciate your call out there in California, Northern California. Let us continue. Freddie, Morris, Minnesota, the great WZFG. Go.
Well, thanks for taking my call, Mark, and really it is an honor to speak with you.
Thank you, sir.
What I wanted to say was I've been thinking a lot lately about the fairness doctrine. And this was something that was proposed by the Democrats and Nancy Pelosi a few years ago in order to even the playing field between conservative and liberal voices on the media. And it passed, of course, or it did not pass, thank God. But I wonder how things would be in the media if the fairness doctrine it did pass, and
I'll tell you what I would do. I would eventually leave radio and go to podcasting solely, because they couldn't control you there.
So that is to do with radio. The fairness could apply to all media, and with.
Well, they'd have a hell of a fight if somebody has a microphone and they want to broadcast on the internet. Although this control of the internet is starting to look more and more like Red China, isn't it? And I have to say, as a footnote here, and I want to make this point, and people know where I stand on this. And the president applauded the Supreme Court decision. I find it abhorrent that the Supreme Court issued a decision. Freddie, thank you for your call. I'm going to kind of lurch into this other issue as well, and we'll continue to talk about what we've been talking about too. That a state can tax an out-of-state business transaction in order to tax people who do business on the internet. And I keep hearing that's good. It evens the playing field because, retail stores, they have to pay that sales tax. So why shouldn't people who make sales on the internet? Well, I'll tell you why. Because they also have shipping costs and insurance costs that most retail stores don't have unless they choose to take their business in that direction. But I don't really care. This is called capitalism. You want to have a retail shop the way my parents did for 20, 25 years? Fine. You want to start a business on the internet? Fine. These are the rules. This is how it works. I'm getting very, very concerned about conservatives who seem to think that we should tax the hell out of the guy next to us to make sure we have a level playing field. That's not the answer. The answer is to lower taxes for everybody. Moreover, it amazes me that consumers say, yeah, let's do that when they're the ones who pay. Let me tell you what's going on in this country right now. Now somebody's going to get mad at me. The price of steel in this country, those tariffs went in place in April, late April. The price of steel in this country has gone up 40%. 40%. On you. On you. That's going to have a ripple effect in this economy. Now they're excited because the Supreme Court ruled that states can tax internet sales, even if the entrepreneur, small business or big business doing the sale isn't in their state. That states can tax it. States are very excited. They all want money. They have an insatiable appetite for your money. And I hear people on TV. Well, this is fair, you see, because it levels the playing field. No, it's not fair. Now that guy on the internet has to be... Those tariffs went in place in April, late April. The price of steel in this country has gone up 40%. 40%. On you. On you. That's going to have a ripple effect in this economy. Now they're excited because the Supreme Court ruled that states can tax internet sales, even if the entrepreneur, small business or big business doing the sale isn't in their state. That states can tax it. States are very excited. They all want money. They have an insatiable appetite for your money. And I hear people on TV. Well, this is fair, you see, because it levels the playing field. No, it's not fair. Now that guy on the internet has to be prepared to handle 45 different states and state laws when it comes to taxes. It's going to blow out a whole bunch of businesses on the internet. We want to create growth. We want to create opportunity. That doesn't do it. Why do we embrace these special interests who demand that the government or the courts step in? It's appalling. Steel, 40% higher. What do you think that's going to do to the cost of trucks in this country? What do you think it's going to do for the cost of refrigerators and washing machines and dishwashers? You think only billionaires use those? Or aluminum, for that matter. You're going to put Americans out of work. You're going to drive up the cost to middle-class families of basic goods. China's different. China's a national security issue. I have no problem with that. I have a problem with the rest of it. 40% increase in steel? When you have a 25% tariff, how does that happen? I'll tell you how it happens. We're getting ripped off. We're getting ripped off. You buy into these sob stories, whether it's immigration or whether it's tariffs. And the result is more and more government and more lawlessness. And less freedom and less capitalism and competition. And so now the court, whoa, what a great ruling. The court has decided now that states can tax extraterritorially. That's a tax on your head right there. Those of you who like to go on the internet. We don't exist for retail stores. I grew up in a retail store environment. I used to work in a retail store. You don't exist for retail stores. You don't exist for internet sales. It is what it is. I'm tired of this. It needs to be fair. Sound like leftists. Well, you need to be equal. It's called capitalism. Now, we just had a big increase of military spending. The president said he signed this massive spending bill, which is going to add massive amount of money to our debt. Now, that's real news, but the pseudo-news outlets don't report on that. Now, we're going to be buying less tanks, less fighter jets, less bombers, less bombs, because our military uses a lot of steel and a lot of aluminum. So there's consequences for this. Because if you sell throughout the country, you're going to have to file 45 different sales tax returns in 45 different states. Now tell me that's not a disincentive. Well, we equaled the playing field. No, you didn't. You burned it up. These clowns on the Supreme Court. Mr. Kennedy has no relationship with reality. None. He's never started a business, retail or internet. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the summer blowout sale for Chamonix right now. And right now, when you order Genucel, you'll get the new Genucel eyelid lift for droopy, saggy eyelids for free. I know this stuff works because my buddy Teddy, he can't get enough of it. There is a Teddy, and he is my buddy. And he's a serious person. He is am I allowed to say, cardiologist. And not just any cardiologist. I mean, top-of-the-line guy. And for the first time ever, you'll also get the world-famous Crystalis Microderm Abrasion, also free. Yes, the best sale of the year just got better. Now, here's Claire from Raleigh, North Carolina. She wrote, I've been using your products for 3 days, and my husband already noticed the texture of my skin. It's looking so good. It feels nice and smooth with lots of moisture. The bags under my eyes are minimal now. So far, so good. Now, you can do that too, folks. Plus, with immediate effects included, you'll see results in 12 hours, guaranteed, or your money back. That's pretty damn good. Call 800-SKIN-604, 800-SKIN-604, or visit Genucel.com. Experience the power of looking and feeling your best every morning. And help Chamonix's commitment to battered women's shelters across America, too. Order today and say goodbye to bags and puffiness tomorrow. Right now, express shipping is also free. Call 800-SKIN-604, 800-SKIN-604, or visit Genucel.com. That's Genucel.com, 800-SKIN-604. Don't forget, Troopathon.org. Is that it, Mr. Producer? I want to get their website right. Troopathon.org. In about an hour and a half, I will be on the program. It's being webcasted. I hope you'll check in. I hope you'll give them support. Now, what they do is they send care packages overseas to our troops. And you can donate money for one care package or multiple care packages, and they have wonderful, wonderful products in them that our troops really need. You know, people forget that we have these men and women overseas. It really is troubling, you know. With pseudo events here, we're supposed to be following Stormy Daniels, and then we're supposed to be following this one and that one. You're well aware, I think, at this point, that the cover of Time magazine is absolutely fraudulent, that the little child on the cover of Time magazine, in fact, has not been separated from his mother. The mother decided to abscond with the little child, the daughter, out of Honduras without the father's knowledge. There's several siblings with the father back in Honduras. He's not happy about it. He would like them to come back. And there's a lot of stories like this that, of course, the media will not tell you. This was in the, Daily Mail, which, of course, is not the New York Times, the Washington Post, MSNBC, CBS, and all the rest of it. It is a British newspaper. We'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. We will rue the day that the Supreme Court interfere with the market system and turn the tax-free internet, in terms of sales tax, into just effectively a retail internet store. We will rue the day. The Commerce Department, under Mr. Protectionist, who's made his billions from protectionism, that story's never been told, Wilbur Ross, is investigating recent steel price hikes to determine whether some market participants are illegitimately profiteering from new tariffs. Profiteering from tariffs? How do you do that? I'll tell you how you do that. Because you put a tax on Americans, American businesses and so forth, who use steel that would come into this country from other countries. Domestic steel companies jack up their prices. They jack up their prices for several reasons. Number one, there's greater demand now for domestic steel. That was the intent. Because you have altered the market. You are managing the market. You are poisoning the market system. And so you're jacking up the price. And you create more and more demand for domestic steel. So in addition to the pressures placed on domestic steel because you're putting a tax on any steel that comes into this country, the domestic producers not only increase the price of their steel right under the amount of the tariff amount, but now you've built, through market dislocation, incentives to purchase domestic steel, and the pressure is on with supply and demand. You've limited the supply, the demand goes up. For the domestic steel, you're driving the price up. Now, in the end, you get screwed. In the end, millions and millions of people get screwed. So it's up 40%. Some places it's up 53%. Quote, there's no reason for tariffs to increase the price of steel by far more than the percentage of the tariff. Is Wilbur Ross an economic illiterate? I know he knows how to make $1 billion through subsidies, protectionism, quotas, and all the rest. You can't not micromanage an industry or an economy this way. So he says the price of steel shouldn't go up any more than the price of the tariff. Now, even under those circumstances, that means the price of steel domestically would go up 25%. That is significant. But it's more than that. You're creating a different market. You are changing the market. You're limiting the competition. You're limiting the availability of the product. So there's an upward pressure on the product. And so, of course, the price is going to go beyond the tariff amount that you're applying to incoming steel from other countries. But look how you get screwed, the consumer, because in the end, you pay for everything. In the end, Mr. and Mrs. America, you pay for everything. Everything. Look how you get screwed. If foreign steel comes into the country, a 25% tariff equals tax. Tax is placed on the Americans who buy that steel. You say, all right, I'm not going to pay for that. I'll buy domestic steel. You buy domestic steel, now the upward pressure's on. You're going to pay 40 to 53% more than you paid 6 months ago. This eventually is going to cause a recession. May not be this year, may not be next year. I hope it's not in the election year. You're driving up the prices artificially by manipulating the market because your hope is to protect our steel industry. Our steel industry has been protected for 50 years. This has been going on, but not like this. This is a real big push. George W. Bush tried it for 10 months. We lost 200,000 jobs. After the fact, it was calculated we lost 200,000 jobs. the goal is to drive prices down, not to drive prices up. Now, on top of this, we have the Supreme Court, a bunch of economic illiterates there for the most part. And they've ruled that, it's amazing. And our buddy Daniel Horowitz has a great piece about this on Conservative Review. It's amazing. The court's position when it comes to federalism versus federal control is so inconsistent. It's irrational. Absolutely irrational. Absolutely irrational. So in this case, it's going to allow states to apply sales taxes to sales that actually occur outside the states because their citizen is inside the state who's the consumer, you. And so you can expect, New York, that the sales tax that you pay in retail stores will now be applied to whatever you purchase over the internet, on top of the cost of shipping and insurance. And if you're a guy or a gal who's trying to participate in the American dream and you say, you know what, I can't afford to rent a place, I can't afford to build a place, I can't afford to carry inventory, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to start on the internet, this magnificent new market that's been put out there, the internet. The government wants control over it. It wants to tax it. State, local, fed. They see money there. Money, money, money. They need more money. And if you want to start now, you now have to meet with a CPA because that CPA is going to tell you may have to file state sales tax returns in 45 states. Because the internet doesn't know any state or any region. When you post something on the internet, the whole world has access to it. So if you live in, say, Iowa, and you have a little internet business, maybe you're making $50,000, $100,000, we have a lot of, quite frankly, women, single women, who use it as a second job, as a second source of income. Well, now you're going to be loaded with red tape and paperwork. This is not what we want in this country. Hey, we leveled the playing field. They level the playing field in totalitarian regimes all the time. Do not buy the populist BS. Stop it with the populist BS, which only empowers them. Hey, we're going to teach everyone. We're going to put tariffs on steel, a.k.a. tax you if you buy steel other than from our steel unions, our steel companies. Well, I don't want to buy that steel. I want to buy somebody else's steel. What, are you un-American? No, what's un-American is playing one citizen off against another. What's un-American is subsidizing some businesses and not other businesses. That's not a level playing field. That's not fair. What's un-American is claiming that, you know what, we got to raise taxes on sales on the internet because it's not fair to people who have to pay taxes who have retail stores. Excuse me? So now you got to raise taxes on everybody? I have an idea, folks. If that's the way we want to go, we should all be paying the same sales tax that they pay in California. It's through the roof. The same sales tax that they pay in Manhattan. It's only fair, you know. It's only fair. It's destructive on so many levels, and not just economic. Not just economic. We have a diverse society. We have mobility where you can get off your ass and go somewhere else if you want to. You want states to do the right things. You want them to attract the businesses and productive individuals. And you need certain types of incentives to do that. You want people starting businesses on the internet because you use the internet. If you didn't use the internet, people wouldn't start businesses on the internet. It's all about controlling you and me. It's all about controlling Joe Sixpack. That's what it is. In the name of Joe Sixpack, just like the leftist regimes all over the world. In the name of the people, they tax the people. In the name of the people, they drive up the price of goods and services. There's your populism. More pseudo events. It's ridiculous. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
host on CNN. Now, if this were any other time in America, he would have been yanked a long time ago. Not because of his race, but because of his racism. He's a very nasty and a very stupid man. Not because of his race, just because he's a very nasty and a very stupid man. And he's on with Stephen Colbert. He used to be a C actor on TV. Then he was on Comedy Central. Now he's got his late-night joke show as a court jester. He found out that the way to get ratings is to advance the left's agenda as best as he can and to be a stupid funny man. And so now he, like the others on late night, use their shows much like CNN and MSNBC. It's hard to tell the difference. But here's Don Lemon. He's particularly detestable with Stephen Colbert. Cut 10, go.
One of the things that's a recurring sort of distressing data point and theme with this administration is using race as a tool to divide
Now,
people.
here you go. There you go. Using race as a tool to divide people. What exactly has Trump done to use race as a tool to divide people? To say that he wants the DACA kids in their 30s, some of them, 1.8 million of them become United States citizens? He went way, way further than Obama ever went. How is he using race? Unemployment in this country is at record lows. Among minorities in this country, it's never been lower. Whether African American, Latino, never been lower, ever. Obama didn't do that. What exactly is Donald Trump doing that suggests that he's a racist in any respect? Nothing. Nothing at all. So there you have propaganda. Go ahead.
I mean, it started off with, they're sending their rapists, the murderers. They're not sending us their best.
But some are rapists and murderers. And by them, he means the cartels. He means the mob organizations. They certainly are. MS-13. These clowns live in bubbles. They live in bubbles. If you are a rocket scientist, if you are an architect, if you are a surgeon and so forth and so on, you don't come across the border illegally in most cases. You try to come across legally. You can get a visa and come into the country and work and so forth and so on. What is inaccurate? Go ahead.
Both sides. There are fine people on both sides in Charlottesville. What's happening on the southern border?
Now, okay, this guy is basically a parrot. Does anybody think when Donald Trump said there are fine people on both sides that he was talking about Klansmen and neo-Nazis? The both sides he was talking about was the issue of whether or not you should tear down historical statues and markers and so forth or not, which is a legitimate debate to have. Just like you have a debate over book burning. It is an absolutely legitimate debate to have on what historical markers you take down or don't take down. That's my understanding of what he meant, but, we got to have these pseudo-events. They've decided that Trump is a racist. You paint him as a racist, and then you got to do what you got to do to demonstrate it. Go ahead.
Certainly a racial component to it. What do you think the state of race relations are in the United States, and how are you as an
Now listen to this idiot. He just condemns the president as if he's Nancy Pelosi. And then he asked Don Lemon what he thinks. He knows what Don Lemon thinks. This is the game. This is exactly what Professor Daniel Boorstin was talking about. The image. The pseudo-events. The pseudo-arguments. Go ahead.
How does it affect your reporting of that?
You have hit on probably the most important story of our time, especially when it comes to this administration.
It's what I do, Don. It's what I do.
I think it has everything to do with race, and we were told, or they would have people would.
What has everything to do with race? What has everything to do with race? What are you talking about? Upholding our immigration laws has to do with race? So I guess Barack Obama was a racist. He didn't propose 1.8 million illegal aliens in this country should get a pathway to citizenship. Obama did. So Barack Obama's obviously a racist, right? Don Lemon, right? Stephen Colbert. Two of the Three Stooges. Go ahead.
That this was about economic anxiety. Every single study and survey shows that this was about people who are losing power, losing influence. It was about race. People were concerned about...
People about losing power and influence. I don't think Don Lemon understands that this is a country and we have...
Told, or they would have... People would...
What has everything to do with race? What has everything to do with race? What are you talking about? Upholding our immigration laws has to do with race? So I guess Barack Obama was a racist. He didn't propose 1.8 million illegal aliens in this country should get a pathway to citizenship. Obama did. So Barack Obama's obviously a racist, right? Don Lemon, right? Stephen Colbert. Two of the Three Stooges. Go ahead.
That this was about economic anxiety. Every single study and survey shows that this was about people who are losing power, losing influence. It was about race. People were concerned about...
People about losing power and influence. I don't think Don Lemon understands that this is a country and we have what's called citizens. And citizens are not supposed to lose power and influence. Whatever the race, religion, ethnic background, economic condition of the citizen is the power. It's called a republic. It's called voting. It's called having representatives. Losing power and influence. The citizens are not supposed to lose power and influence to foreigners, to illegal aliens. You see, Don, you're the racist. Plus, you don't even understand how it's supposed to work because you don't care. Why? You're a radical leftist, and you're in the pseudo-news business. Go ahead.
Not having the same level of influence as they had, and they were concerned about...
That's losing their privilege.
Losing their privilege.
The citizens are losing their privilege? Citizens don't have a privilege. We are this country. Oh, they must be talking about white privilege, you see. White privilege. Who are the racists again? I love it's like the football players taking a knee. This is Steve Colbert taking a knee. The guy's worth tens of millions of dollars. He's as privileged as they get. It's not like he says, I'll do this show once a year and then I'll give up this seat to people of minorities and gay people. He doesn't do that. He's a person of privilege. He's very wealthy. He's a white man. And then he talks about people of privilege, or Don Lemon, as dumb as they get, is a host on CNN making a fortune, despite the fact he's as dumb as they get. Listening to people of privilege talk about people of privilege causes you to gag. I'll be right back.
You're listening to Denali, the Great One.
The Great One.
And you can call in now, 877-381-3811.
What do you think the American revolutionaries would have said if the governor of their particular state, colony, had said, I'm going to impose a 25% tariff on goods shipped into our colony from overseas? Now keep in mind, these are the people who revolted against the Stamp Act. What do you think they would say if they were here today and the argument was made, look, we want to raise taxes, the states. We want to raise taxes on sales on the Internet, sales taxes, even though those taxes, even though that sale didn't actually occur in our state, the company is not in our state, but the purchasers in our state, and we're going to tax that transaction across the boundaries of the colony. What do you think the revolutionaries would say? Oh, that's good. We've leveled the playing field. I mean, we have gone so far, even many pseudo-conservatives, we'll use the word pseudo, who buy into this stuff, the protectionist stuff and so on. You think about our revolutionaries. You think about Sam Adams, John Hancock. Think about them, what they would say. They would say, stop with your cockamamie government intervention and government justification. What's mine is mine. And I'll do with it as I choose. And keep your damn hands off of it. That's what they would say. Just trying to level the playing field. Don't worry about it. I'll level the playing field. I'll decide what I buy and from whom I buy it. I don't exist to protect the guy down the street. And he doesn't exist to protect me and my business. I'll sell candles any way I want to, and I'll sell them to whomever I want to. I will sell buggies and horses to whomever I want to. If I can't sell over there, I'll sell over here, I'll sell over here. We don't need anybody, government, telling us how much we're going to pay. And in order to protect us, they're going to drive up our costs by 25%, which turns out to be 40 to 53%. And if you buy it over here, and you're taxed, and you choose to buy it over here where you're not taxed, we're going to have a level playing field. We're going to tax you in both cases. No. What do you think about a revolutionary that had a small business and was told, now you got to fill out sales taxes for every single colony? Say, what? What? And we have conservatives in this country who think this is a grand idea, all of it. We've lost our way. No, it's not. It's not a grand idea at all. They're stupid ideas that empower government at every level and take money out of your pocket and are going to put your fellow Americans out of work and cause a recession one day. It's just going to happen. The laws of economics are what they are. It's not even my opinion. It's a fact. How many of you have an additional $5,000 sitting around? Anybody? I didn't think so, but you may well need it if your HVAC system burns out because you were not on top of your filters and you didn't change your filter. I know you think I'm being a little melodramatic, but if you saw how bad this allergy season has been, all that junk which doesn't wind up in your lungs, it goes somewhere, it goes into your home's HVAC filter. Like I say, it's getting hotter outside. The last thing you need is a busted HVAC system on top of the allergies. I see these trucks all over my neighborhood. Save time, save money, breathe better with filterbuy.com. Now, I know I do. That's filterbuy.com, filterbuy.com, and tell them Mark sent you. Okay. You know, there's so much audio I'm not playing any more audio. I'm sick of these leftists. This idiot Joe Scarborough. You know what? Shut up, Joe. You and your bulbous nose. And your beady eyes. Let us go to Rudy, Tyler, Texas, the great KTBB. How are you?
Yes, sir. I want to say what an honor it is to talk to you. I listen to you all the time.
Thank you, sir.
I wanted to comment on journalism, pseudo-journalism. I'm a retired journalist, and it is deplorable what journalists have sunken our art into. I graduated from the University of Texas, and one of my heroes was Walter Cronkite, who anguished over fitting 23 minutes of what the American people needed to know. And today, to watch this, it's sickening. It's deplorable. I hate to see what it has become. Mm-hmm. And Texas, as you know, has been Democratic for years and years and years. And back when I was in service. They put a lot of effort into good people trying to do good things for good people, but the Democratic Party has left them all behind. They've moved into this squalid, and it's sickening, really. And you're dead center right about what media has become. I generally don't even discuss my journalism background with people.
Well, you can, because you were and are a professional, my friend. And I want to thank you for sharing that with us very, very much. Chris, Bellport, New York, the great WABC. Go.
Hey, Mark, I'm a little nervous, so please bear with me. Yes. It's an honor to speak to you.
Thank
and
you.
I want to quickly
why is it's an honor for everybody to speak to me? Isn't that nice? I appreciate that. Go right ahead.
Sure. I quickly wanted to say that it's hard to beat the left. We control the presidency, the House, the Senate, and even the Supreme Court. But they control the media, and they repeatedly lie, so that's how they get their message out there. So even with complete control of all the branches of government, it still seems like we're in the back seat, you know? But what I really wanted to say is that, I'm 42.
Can I tell you why?
Sure.
They control, fundamentally, the government. Even when we take the House and the Senate and the presidency, fundamentally, they control the government. There are permanent parts of the government. People have awakened to this. They call it the swamp, but it's this massive administrative state. They control it. That's the way it is. And until we cut down the size of government, limit the power of government, push power back out to the states and the people, it's going to continue to be that way. Anyway, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I'm 42, I'm married, and I have 3 young kids. I work 2 jobs so my wife can stay home and raise our kids. Money's tight, so my wife does have a small internet business. She sells the silliest things, old nail polish, photo frames, books. Sometimes you would see at yard sales. Mm-hmm. She pays for the shipping, so she makes a little money. I'm constantly running back to the FedEx store. Now, she uses this little bit of money for right now. She's saving for a rag doll cat, or she'll save for buy stuff for the kids or for a vacation. But if this comes to fruition, like you're saying, even her small business is going to be out of business.
And, Chris, let me ask you, when she puts things for sale on the Internet, people can buy it from anywhere, right?
Any state, yes.
I just have
to go to FedEx. She pays for it.
But let me say this. Imagine all the little business people like your wife struggling like this. You just said that you ship through FedEx, correct?
Yes.
What do you think is going to happen to FedEx or UPS? I mean, this has an effect across the board when you start messing around like this.
You're right. They never consider the trickle-down effect in the opposite direction. My other business is my family. We own a nursery school on Long Island. So we've been in business since 1959. And recently with Andrew Cuomo's minimum state $15 an hour wage increase, it hurts our customers because they think we're rich, these small business owners, but we pay $15,000.
Let me tell you, I go into a restaurant sometimes, and now and then we're with friends, and I had one friend. They looked at the menu, and there was a New York strip steak, and it was $36. And this person said to me, I can buy that in the store for $9. I said, really? You're not paying for this facility? You're not paying for the help? You're not paying the rent? You're not having to deal with the health inspectors? You're not having to deal with all the regulations? You're not having to hire a CPA? You're not having to pay the utility bills? You're not having to pay this, that? Why the hell do you think the steak is $36?
Another thing, too, is by forcing us to pay all of our teachers at $15 an hour, even the bad ones, not bad, but not so good ones,
yes,
are going to be the same as the good ones, and it's going to be hard to give the good ones a raise because everyone has to get the raise now.
And all this is done in the name of the people. Taxes on the Internet, the so-called minimum wage at $15, tariffs, which are taxes on the consumer, and it's squeezing us, and more and more people will realize I know exactly what I'm talking about. Chris, thanks for your call, buddy. I appreciate it. Do I have time for another one or not? Apparently not. Okay. Bet you'll never guess my favorite place to sit. In my car? No. On my sofa? No. On my X chair. And my X chair is right here. I'm sitting on it now at my desk in the bunker. The X from X chair is not only the most modern and stylish piece of furniture in the bunker, it is luxuriously comfortable, and I mean it. It molds itself to my body, giving me ideal posture. You don't even hear me talking about my back anymore, which in turn gives me more energy, better concentration, more productivity than I ever thought possible. Don't waste another day sitting in one of those generic chairs. You may have got it from an office store, a warehouse store, whatever. Stop it. Get the X chair. You'll feel the difference, I promise. In fact, if you own a small business, get them for the entire office. See how much your employees appreciate them and how productive they'll become as a result. Now, here's a special deal just for you, my beloved listeners. Go to xchairlevin.com, xchairlevin.com. Go there right now, and you'll get $100 off, $100 off. That's xchairlevin.com, xchairlevin.com, or give them a call, 1-844-4-XChair. Very simple, 1-844-4-XChair. Now, X-Chair comes with a 30-day, no questions asked guarantee of complete satisfaction. No risk at all. And trust me, you're going to have complete satisfaction. I love this chair. Go to xchairlevin.com. That's xchairlevin.com. Go now. And by the way, if you use code LevinFootrest, you'll get a free footrest, which I'm using right now as well. That's xchairlevin.com. Use code LevinFootrest and get your free footrest. Check them out. I know you're going to love it. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Don't forget, after this program, I will be on Troopathon, at Troopathon on their event. It's very, very important. Troopathon.org. Please check it out. They only have about an hour or so left on the program there. Troopathon.org. Quickly, Fred, Minneapolis, Minnesota, on the Mark Levin app. Go ahead.
Hey, Mark, thanks for all you do. I just wanted to show the opportunity that the professor's book points out the clear difference, black and white, between progressive and conservative. The conservative sees all that powerful information in that book and will see it as a warning, as a red line, something to avoid, but a progressive sees it as a manual, a manifest on how to get where they want to go.
Well, you're probably right, aren't you?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, very good point. Thank you, my friend. We only have 20 seconds? All right. May I suggest you don't need to get it, but you might want to get it. This book, The Image, A Guide to Pseudo-Events in America, but important. Troopathon.org. Please check it out. They only have about an hour or so left on the program there. Troopathon.org. Quickly, Fred, Minneapolis, Minnesota, on the Mark Levin app. Go ahead.
Hey, Mark, thanks for all you do. I just wanted to show the opportunity that the professor's book points out the clear difference, black and white, between progressive and conservative. The conservative sees all that powerful information in that book and will see it as a warning, as a red line, something to avoid, but a progressive sees it as a manual, a manifest on how to get where they want to go.
Well, you're probably right, aren't you?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, very good point. Thank you, my friend. We only have 20 seconds? All right. May I suggest you don't need to get it, but you might want to get it. This book, The Image, A Guide to Pseudo-Events in America by Daniel J. Borston. I don't even know how many copies they have left. I got mine on Amazon before they were taxing the hell out of us, so you may want to move on it now. All right, every Friday, in your honor, so here we go.